Our planning and zoning meeting for December 17th has been called to order. We have a few missing seats, but we do have enough to support a quorum, so we are ready to go. And our first order of business, as always, is approving the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to our agenda? If not, a motion to adopt would be in order.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight.
And there's our second. All those in favor of adopting the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. That motion is unanimous. We have minutes for our Planning and Zoning Board regular meeting of November 26th. Does anyone have any changes there? If not, would I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. That is also a unanimously carried motion. Our first case this evening is 18 REZ02 Western PDD. And Ms. Redling's here to speak to us. Good evening.
Good evening. This is a request to add a new use and associated development standards to a 4.94 acre tract in the Weston Planned Development District. And the tract is located at 1000 Winstead Drive. Tract outlined here and in its location on the north side of Weston Parkway. And it's bounded on the west by Old Reedy Creek Road, and this is Weston here. Here's a broader view that shows the surrounding uses, and I don't know if you're familiar with Weston Parkway, but here are the Weston 1 and 2 office buildings. These are apartments here. There is a house here. It's on O&I zoned. It's not on residentially zoned land, but it is a house. And the Hoganis building is here. This is the Wessex subdivision, and this is a row of office buildings right here. The subject tract is part of the approximately 1,000 acre Weston Planned Development District, or PDD, which was initially approved in 1984. And you can see the subject site is located at the eastern end of the PDD, and Western Parkway is sort of like a spine that goes through the entire PDD district. The current zoning for the site is PDD major, and the designated land use within the PDD is office and institutional. And here at this map on the left is the Weston PDD master plan, and it designated the subject site for office and institutional uses. On the left, you see the zoomed-in view. The master plan was amended with a rezoning in 2004 to allow the development of Weston Lakeside Apartments that are located just to the northwest of the subject site. And then another rezoning in 2010 allowed development of the lofts at Weston Lakeside north of the subject site. When the lofts at Weston Lakeside were built, Winstead Drive was connected to Old Reedy Creek, and creating the 4.94 acre triangle of land that is the subject site. So you can see how earlier Winstead Drive was not connected to Reedy Creek. Here's the list of the existing permitted uses for the site. The applicant is proposing to add public accommodation, hotel, or motel as a permitted use to this list of uses. And I'll just call your attention to these if you want to take a minute to look at them. Offices, clubs, lodges, churches, museums, schools, child care centers, nursing home, funeral home, animal hospital, post office, public utilities, and telecommunication towers. The proposed revisions to the PDD, and these are for the hotel use only, are to reduce the 50-foot streetscape buffer along Old Reedy Creek Road to 30 feet, supplement the required streetscape plantings along Weston Parkway to achieve a Type A buffer standard, increase the maximum building height from 50 to 90 feet, which is approximately 7 stories, reduce the parking rate by 19%, and provide sidewalks along all 3 street frontages. Additionally, for the hotel use, if the hotel use were to be realized, the applicant would provide hardscape features to beautify and screen the service entry, and I'll show you that on a map in a minute. provide signalized pedestrian crossings, construct a right turn lane on Weston Parkway onto Winstead Drive, provide an at-grade pedestrian path from the parking structure to the main hotel entrance, and incorporate a terrace on an upper floor of the hotel that can accommodate full-service food operations. And here's the depiction of the proposed master plan. And in the, I guess you'd say, blue on the right is the building envelope for the hotel. The peach color on the left is the parking envelope where there would be a 2 or 3 story structure, a parking deck right here in this area. Also, the main access to the site would be off of Winstead Drive, and these arrows depict that site access. They're not in exactly the place where they might be, but it's going to be on this side. The service entry to the site would be off of Old Reedy Creek Road, here, service access here, and service access here. And the applicant is proposing here to do those hardscape features, a 6-foot screening wall and some decorative paving on the apron leading in and around there on the parking. Also, I guess it's the signalized pedestrian crossings. One would be in this area across Winstead, and the other would be across Weston. And then finally, that red streak there represents the widened turn lane and storage, vehicular storage that they are proposing. Cary's GIS maps indicate a stream buffer may slightly impact the property. There are no proposed or existing greenways or street-side trails within or directly adjacent to the subject site. However, a street-side trail is proposed for the south side of Weston Parkway, and the applicants offer to install signalized pedestrian crossings across Winstead and Weston Parkway would improve safety for pedestrians who wanted to cross over that intersection to get to the street-side trail. Currently, Go Cary Route 3, which is shown in green on this map, travels east on Weston Parkway with no stops at the subject site. Transit staff plan to implement a westbound Go Cary route in 2019, which will connect the subject property to areas of interest such as Park West Village to the west, and will also provide regional connectivity via the Cary Depot. On the transportation plan, Winstead Drive is a designated thoroughfare, and Weston Parkway is a 4-lane thoroughfare with landscape median, and Old Reedy Creek Road is just a local road. A traffic study was performed for this site and identified several deficiencies as a result of site-generated traffic. The intersections studied are depicted on this map with red dots. At the intersection of Weston and Winstead, the study recommended a right turn lane from Weston onto Winstead, along with signal modifications to help alleviate some queuing issues on Weston Parkway due to both existing as well as projected site traffic. And as mentioned earlier, the applicant has offered to construct that right turn lane. Before the Town Council public hearing on June 28th, 7 citizens attended the neighborhood meeting on March 7th. Concerns were expressed about the height and visibility of the proposed hotel. Questions were asked about setbacks, proposed parking, sidewalks, and the traffic analysis. Staff also responded to an information request by the Western Property Owners Association, and a caller from Wessex Subdivision expressed concern via email about traffic, safety, and overdevelopment. At the Town Council public hearing on June 28th, 9 citizens offered comments. 6 citizens expressed concerns about traffic, making it difficult to safely turn in and out of the Wessex subdivision, the proposed 100-foot maximum building height, the proposed buffer reduction along Weston Parkway, and some Wessex residents expressed concern that hotel guests would be able to see into their backyards. Other speakers said they didn't see the need for another hotel in the area. And 3 speakers spoke in favor, saying there is a need for more affordable, nice hotels in Cary. Council members expressed concerns about the proposed buffer reduction along Weston, combined with the increase in building height, the lack of pedestrian crosswalks, the loss of office space, the change in character along Weston Parkway, And 2 council members encouraged the applicant to conduct a balloon test to provide a visual representation of the proposed height of the building. And the applicants did do that. They conducted a balloon test on August 16th, and the applicant floated balloons to a height of 100 feet from the approximate location of the front corners of the proposed building, the 2 corners that would face Weston Parkway. Neighbors within 800 feet were notified of the balloon test. Staff and a number of neighbors were in attendance that morning. Staff stood across from the site near the intersection of Weston and Winstead, and this star is to approximate about where I and other staff were standing. And this is, that star is this location right here. And we were able to see a balloon floating just above the trees right here. At the other side, at this star location, looking west toward Old Reedy Creek Road and Weston Parkway, we again could see the other balloon right above the treetops. Since the town council public hearing and the balloon test was conducted, and staff have received input from 9 citizens. That input restated their concerns about traffic, buffer reduction, and loss of privacy. And additional concerns were about the parking reduction being requested, concerns that parking would be forced into the neighborhood, late hotel operating hours, light pollution, and several citizens were also stated their concern that the balloon test didn't give them enough of a sense of the impact the building would have. And I would say the balloon test was actually just to show, demonstrate the height of the building, and was not really intended to show the bulk of the building. After the balloon test, the applicant restored the streetscape buffer request back to 50 feet, so they dropped their request to reduce it along Weston, and reduced the maximum building height from their requested 100 feet to 90 feet, and offered these additional conditions you see listed here. In addition to the sidewalks, they would also enhance the Weston streetscape buffer to a type A buffer by adding more plantings, provide some hardscape features around the service entry that we saw on that map, provide signalized pedestrian crossings, construct a right turn lane, provide an at-grade pedestrian path from the parking structure to the hotel entrance, because the parking structure will be at a lower level topographically, and they would connect it so that it was a straight path to the hotel entrance, and incorporate a terrace on an upper floor of the hotel to accommodate full service food service. Staff has evaluated the applicant's proposal against the vision of the Imagine Cary Plan's Future Growth Framework Map and the policies contained in the Work, Shape, and Move chapters. On the Future Growth Framework Map, the Weston PDD, represented here in the pink, the lighter pink purple color, which includes the subject site, is designated as a future employment mixed-use campus. The Imagine Cary Plan defines employment mixed-use campus as having either a vertical or horizontal mix of office, commercial, and residential uses arranged in a walkable pattern with an active pedestrian realm where buildings front streets. So that's the vision for the entire PDD. The character of the employment mixed-use campus is meant to be somewhat more urban than traditional office parks, with a greater emphasis on structured parking, but with ample landscaping and attention paid to site design, public gathering spaces, and a more interconnected street and pedestrian network. So a little history. As noted earlier, the Weston PDD was initially planned as a traditional office park made up primarily of office uses back when it started in the 80s. In 2004, the developers presented a revised master plan to transition Weston to a more mixed-use environment that they felt like was more what the market was looking for. And in the 14 years since, 7 tracts in the PDD have developed as residential, and commercial uses have been approved for 2 tracts. I'm not sure they got developed, but they were approved. It was in acknowledgement of this transitioning environment that the Imagine Cary Plan designated the Weston PDD as a future employment mixed-use campus. The plan's work policies 2 and 12 recognize that to remain competitive in the 21st century, workplace locations must appeal to businesses looking for the full range of amenities and services that a mixed-use location provides. A hotel within the Weston PDD would continue the transition from a traditional office park feeling to a more mixed-use model. At the same time, work policies 8 and 10 recognize the need to provide office locations for new and expanding firms in Cary, and the subject site is one of the last undeveloped office sites in Weston. Shape policies 2 and 3 support increased density and a mix of uses within the employment mixed-use campus. Use of the site for a hotel is generally consistent with that vision, as a hotel could support Weston businesses with lodging that's convenient to the airport, as well as provide other supporting uses such as meeting rooms and a restaurant. That said, there are several existing hotels in the Weston area, and a rezoning for 2 more hotels has recently been approved. Shape Policy 4 recognizes that infill development may need added height for a project to be economically viable, but cautions that infill should be complementary to surrounding properties. The proposed 7-story hotel on a 5-acre site will have a more intense visual presence on the eastern end of Western Parkway than currently exists. And Policy 8 reinforces the importance of high-quality building design and ample landscaping. Move policies 1 and 2 reinforce the importance of safety and accessibility for all users and modes of travel, and policies 3 and 8 reinforce the importance of an attractive, well-maintained system that complements the land use context. The applicant is offering to provide sidewalks, supplemental plantings along the 50-foot streetscape, and to construct the right turn lane and provide signalized pedestrian crossings. These should add to pedestrian safety and accessibility. In summary, staff's analysis is that the applicant's proposal would continue the Weston PDD's transition that began in 2004 to a more mixed-use environment, and as a commercial use has the potential to advance the employment mixed-use campus vision. On the other hand, a hotel use would remove 5 acres of office-designated land from a dwindling inventory in the Weston PDD, and the proposed plan for a 7-story building with adjacent structured parking on 5 acres would introduce a new level of development intensity to the eastern end of the Weston Parkway corridor. After weighing all considerations, of which there are many in this case, staff finds on balance that the applicant's proposal is generally consistent with the Imagine Cary community plan. And I believe the applicant is here to make some comments.
Good evening. I'm Sal Musera. I'm a senior land planner with Kimley Horn and Associates. Happy to be here tonight, and thanks to Hannah and staff for a very thorough summary. We're primarily here to answer your questions. I've had a couple brief comments, but staff report was very well done, so I don't want to repeat everything, but want to highlight a couple of points. I certainly think it's important that the idea that this is per your Imagine Cary plan, an area that is really seeking to transition from sort of the old office park model into more of a mixed-use type of development. And that said, our project is still something that, with the maintained buffers and the small footprint, we still think fits the character of the overall area. And there is certainly a high demand for this use given the other types of development that are occurring in the area. This is a very challenging site to develop physically, which is probably one reason why it exists there today in the state that it is. It's got over 30 feet of topo drop across it. The triangular shape is very difficult to develop with that topo. With the buffers, we also have a large dedication, right-of-way dedication along Winstead. At the end of the day, the developable, buildable site is just about half, a little more than half of the 5-acre total site in terms of what you can put developable buildings and parking. And so in order to deal with that, what we're really doing is looking at a pretty creative development for this type. And that includes some creative design on the architecture. This is not a prototypical hotel building because that simply doesn't work on the site. You really can't surface park this site and get much building on it because it's so small. So structured parking with this type of development is very rare. Normally you can't make those numbers work. So the parking footprint is smaller to go in structured parking. And the structured parking on the site is in the lowest part of the site. So to give you an idea, the uppermost level of the parking deck is only 10 feet in elevation above Weston Parkway, essentially 1 story. So even though it's a multi-story deck, it sits down very low and is only about 10 feet above the elevation on Weston Parkway. Since the original application, as you heard, we've made some changes. First, we withdrew the reduction buffer request on Weston, so we're maintaining that 50-foot buffer. And in addition, the new conditions that we have offered really are designed to address all the comments we were hearing from council, from neighbors, adjacent landowners, to the best extent that we could. Certainly, the public sidewalks on all sides are not a current condition of the PDD, so that is a condition that we've offered. In addition to maintaining the 50-foot buffer, we've added a condition to supplement if and when and where necessary to maintain your type A standard, buffer standard along Weston. So that's a pretty dense buffer. The enhanced paving to make sure the pedestrian experience is good, even where we have the service entry off of Old Reedy Creek Road is an offer to enhance. And the westbound turn lane, that was a little bit, some of our traffic folks had analyzed it and weren't sure that was absolutely necessary based on what we're generating, but we are committed to that. We've conditioned that west turn lane. And I will say there were some concerns about it from the standpoint of widening and clearing and creating a little bit of a different character on Weston that is not there today. There are very few, if any, turn lanes on Weston Parkway today. But we've conceded and committed and offered that as a condition to alleviate any concerns on traffic queuing there. So thus the westbound turn lane is a condition of the application right now. And then, of course, a commitment to the pedestrian safety improvements at the intersection at Weston and Winstead. We have handed out some exhibits. The exhibits are not conditions of the applications, but we've had requests to people who want to sort of envision what we're thinking about. And I think what the illustrations show is that, again, there's a creative level and a high design level in this project. Some of that is just a requirement of the nature of the site itself, but it's also a commitment of the applicant to really, maintain or, in fact, elevate the quality of the design work that's there and not just put some type of prototypical building on this site. So those images, I think, give you a good idea of architecture intent and a good idea of how the buffers and the vegetation really impact the visibility to that site. And a reference to balloon test, that was a request of council. We think there's some value in doing those things. Obviously, it's not dropping a whole building on there and showing you what it's going to look like. The reference to the balloon test is simply to say if a building were this height, would you see it above the tree line? The images that you saw, there were some vantage points where you could see that balloon just above the tree line. Since then, we've lowered the building height another 10 feet, which theoretically could drop that balloon out of sight. But again, it's take the test for the value, but it was something that people were interested in seeing. So we were glad to do that. I'm going to stop there, and again, the team is here available to answer any questions you might have about the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant or for the staff? And I got to say, that was a really well done presentation, staff report. Anyone?
I have a question. The height of the building and the balloon test that was representing it, you were showing the balloon test above the height of the trees. Are those trees that were in the picture going to stay there during the site development process?
For the most part, so that first 50-foot of buffer will remain unchanged, and generally most of the trees, not an exact science that you were seeing, are in the foreground. Most of those would occur within the 50-foot. I couldn't say 100% of them, but for the most part, that vantage point, you'd be looking at the first 50-foot of vegetation that is there today.
Okay. That's all I have for this moment.
Let's stay on this side, sure.
Just a couple. How far is the Wessex subdivision from this site?
I'm recalling a number of about 600 feet. And I'd have to confirm that, but I believe that was a number that we took off some mapping.
And with lowering it to 10 feet and having the terrace, will that be below the tree line?
Yes, so remember that the balloon was flown at about 100 feet, which is really at the top of structure. So that's even, higher than the actual floors of the building. When you drop that 10 feet, theoretically that top would come below. The terrace is on an upper level, which again is, that terrace level is probably is 10 feet below the top of the building. So it would be on one of the upper floors with a view out to the lake.
So the trees should cover that?
The trees you shouldn't see it.
Okay.
That's correct.
So from what you just said, you're saying that the terrace is going to be fronting the lake and facing away from
Exactly.
Weston Parkway?
Yes, ma'am, that's the intent, to really provide a lake view. We actually had some council members request to keep that on as high a level as we could, just so that we could maintain that amenity of seeing the lake.
Thank you.
That's it for this side. Okay, over on the right. Anyone?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Can you just clarify, when you talk about the service entrance on Reedy Creek, that's not the main entrance of the hotel, that's basically delivery service, if I understand that, 'cause I wasn't sure, but now I see the picture here.
That's
so-
correct, yes.
Okay, so the main entrance of the hotel is going to be for guests arriving, whether by car, taxi, Uber, whatever, it's going to be on Winstead.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Correct.
And so
that's how it's shown in the zoning conditions.
okay, thank you, that helps. And so there will be added a right turn lane, which I assume is going to begin at about Old Reedy Creek Road and continue on to Winstead Drive, is that?
No, I don't believe it will go that far back. It's only
Okay.
going to be 100 feet of storage for cars,
Okay.
and with a 100-foot taper. So it'd be about 200 feet, which would take it not quite to the middle, I think, of the.
Okay, all right, so about 400 feet, okay, so it starts in the middle. And the pedestrian, just so I have clarification, and I apologize, I left my notes at home. The pedestrian, the signaling is going to be only at the intersection of Weston and Winstead?
That's correct.
The upgrade, okay, thank you. And one last question, on the balloon test picture photo that you showed, the first one, where you showed that staff was basically down across from Winstead, and we saw the balloon, as I read the balloon test, the balloons were, the effort was to try to have the balloons elevated at, I think, the two front corners of the building, if I remember.
Correct.
So in that image, as I'm standing in Winstead, the balloon that we saw, was that the closest corner or the furthest corner from the building? If you understand what I'm...
From the vantage point at Winstead, I think that was the far corner.
I think it's
I'm sorry, I don't remember which slide that was.
out. That's okay. I can. Sorry, I should have remembered that one. Okay. So we were standing here looking, if you can see that star, kind of looking that way because the balloons were floated from about here, one there, and one here. So this would be the building frontage, and it went along Weston. Now, I shouldn't have said the front of the building. I should say the two corners that are going to face Weston. So we were looking at one floated here in this picture, and then in the second picture, we were standing across the street looking at one floated here, about
Okay.
there.
So in that first picture, really looking at if I'm looking at the building from Weston, I'm looking at the left-hand corner. And in this picture, this one's looking at the left-hand corner, and the other picture looking at the right-hand. Thank you, I appreciate that. And as we think about, that's all the questions I have. I don't have any other questions. Thanks.
Has anyone else? got
Chairman
any other questions?
Evangelista, if I could, I have two things I should have clarified earlier. One, I wanted to remind you, as always, that, and as the applicant has said, that the drawings are just representations. They're not a guarantee that that's how anything will look. They're not a zoning condition. It was just an illustration for you to look at. And the second thing I meant to say earlier was the list of zoning conditions, I said were specific to the hotel, but I wanted to just clarify that if this rezoning were to be approved, those zoning conditions only kick in if a hotel is built. But if a hotel is not built, those other permitted uses could be built, and these zoning conditions are not associated with other things that could be built there. Not the widening of the road, not the height, maximum height either, but not the widening and not the pedestrian signalization and not the sidewalks. So I just want to make sure that you are aware of that.
And to go one step further, only for 2A. So anything else in the PDD
That's
still
right.
runs with the
Oh,
old
yeah,
conditions.
exactly. Mhm.
Okay.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the board find case number 18REZ02 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and by all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Have we a second?
A second.
Any further discussion?
I think it makes sense in this area, given the proximity of the businesses that are in the area. We've got MetLife that's close by, Perimeter Park is close by with Lenovo and everybody in there. So SAS isn't too far away as well. And there's also several businesses that are tucked away off Weston Parkway. I just think this makes sense in that area to offer not just lodging options, but employment opportunities in that area.
Anything to add?
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion on this motion?
I agree with what Cary says. I guess it's a little troubling because Wessex is kind of a outlier. It's been there a long time, but it's the only residential piece that's really close and approaching the rest of these very distinct commercial office type campuses that are in the vicinity. So I understand why they're concerned as far as, you know, anything that adds to the traffic flow. But as Sherry said, I think this fits pretty nicely with the existing office sort of industrial area and provides opportunities for guests to have a place to stay in a transient environment. So
Can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
I am always impressed when I see an applicant work with the local citizens, so I'd like to commend you on that. It makes it a lot easier to look at these cases.
Any other discussion on this motion?
I just kind of echo some of the things that have been said. I am aware of the location of Wessex, also aware that, you know, the Weston development has been there for a long time, and that I appreciate the applicant making some adjustments, reducing the building height by 10 feet, taking the concern, you know, not asking for a change onto the streetscape, on the buffer on Weston. You know, if we look at that as just an isolated pod, that development is there. I mean, it's a piece that fits because you've got the multifamily, you got office, et cetera, you know, not too far from the wastewater treatment plant, which is always a great amenity for commercial development. But, but you know, next to it, there's still an office opportunity site. And so, you know, we see that and we know it, but it's also been a site. It's a kind of tough site for somebody who want to come in. So you know, I'll vote for it.
All right. Well, if that's it, then would all those in favor of 18REZ02 please say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries unanimously. We are now on to our second case.
Thank you.
Ms. Redling, thank you very much. Next up is 18REZ20. Mr. Dylan Paul is back with us.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the board. So tonight, we have a request to amend a portion of an existing planned development district located at 1881 Lake Pine Drive. The site is highlighted in yellow on this map and is located in the east quadrant of the Lake Pine Drive and McGregor Pines Drive intersection. Subject site is Zone PDD Minor, McGregor Center. The applicant is not proposing to change the PDD designation. However, the applicant is proposing to increase the number of allowed personal service establishments from 1 to 2 and to add commercial indoor recreational facility as a permitted use. Now, what is a personal service establishment, you might ask? That would be a business that provides individual services to customers located on the site of the business and would include such uses as travel agencies, dry cleaners, tailors, repair shops, one-on-one fitness instruction facilities, for example, a personal trainer. It would not include indoor-outdoor recreation uses, which is where uses such as taekwondo studios, karate schools, or dance schools fall into that category. These kind of uses address large groups of people and therefore are distinct from personal service establishments. Now here's a photo of the McGregor Square Shopping Center. And we've had uses like the indoor-outdoor recreations uses in the past. Back in 2012, for example, there was a karate school on the site. And in 2016, the town amended the LDO where we added that commercial indoor recreation category. So this amendment would bring those former uses back into compliance. In our preliminary analysis of this request, we found that this amendment would bring that use into compliance and would expand opportunities for further businesses on the property. It would help the McGregor Shopping Center continue to thrive. Subject site, as you can see here, is located within the commercial center designation on the future growth framework map. At the neighborhood meeting, no property owners attended and no citizens expressed concerns to staff through phone calls or emails. During the Town Council public hearing on October 25th, no citizens spoke during the public hearing. There were no questions or comments from council, and there have been no changes in the application since the hearing. Staff finds that the rezoning is consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan. The proposal supports policies from Work and Shop chapter of the Cary Community Plan. The proposed commercial use is consistent with the Future Growth Framework Map as a commercial center, and the proposed use is reasonable given the commercial center location. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff, as well as the owner of the property, is available to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm basically here to answer any questions, really. I think Dylan did a fabulous job, so yeah.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
If we have, I'm sure we'll have any questions, we'll be happy to bring them to you. Anyone on this side?
I had a point of clarification. So this use was if I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was an approved pre-existing or a pre-existing use that was allowed, but somehow it changed in this?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
The LDO and the PDD had changed over the years, and now the use is no longer conforming, so this PDD amendment would make it conforming.
Anything else? Sherry?
I don't have anything on this one.
Okay.
I don't have any.
Nope. I just have one question.
Okay.
To limit the number of personal services, is there a sort of a philosophy behind that by restricting the amount of personal services that could be in any shopping center?
Yes, so with personal service establishments, the kind of general theory behind that was these businesses can generate some traffic, and the idea originally was to maybe limit some of the sheer number of businesses, so to limit the traffic impact. In this case, you know, the LDO and the PDD amendments have reflected that earlier, and this amendment would just bring the number from 1 to 2, and staff doesn't see a potential significant increase in traffic based on that. There was not a traffic study done for this PDD amendment. It wasn't the projected daily trips wouldn't increase beyond 100 peak hours or 100 peak hour trips. But yeah, we wouldn't anticipate that.
Good. Thanks. That clears it up for me. And any other questions for our staff or for the applicant?
So would you just clarify under this, in the current slide, under Lot 2A, increase the number of allowed personal services from 1 to 2?
Yes.
1 to 2 what?
Personal service establishments. Yes. So
Establishments.
Establishments, yes.
I understand. Okay.
No one else? Nothing for our applicant? I'm almost disappointed for you that no one. Okay, well then, would there be a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the board find case number 18 REZ 20 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report presentation and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Have we a second?
I will second that motion.
Any further discussion?
It was a use that was allowed before, and I guess on a personal note, I remember when that whole development was trees, and that was going back about probably 20 years ago. I remember before even the shopping center was across the street, and anything that helped the viability and the future development of that would be welcome, I think. That's just my personal note. And keeping tenants in the building so it stays as it is, and I've seen, I think every tenant in there is turned over at least once, so keep at least up.
Anything else?
Yep.
No. Would all those in favor then please say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. That is a unanimously carried motion as well. We'll find something to ask you before the night's out.
Thank you, Board.
Our third and final case for the evening is 18 REZ 21, Good Hope Church Road. Katie Dry's here to speak with us. Ms. Dry, good evening.
Good evening, Board. This is a request to rezone 1.58 acres at 6808 Good Hope Church Road. The site is located on the north side of Good Hope Church Road, is just east of Highway 55, which you can see here, and it's the CSX railroad line. The entire parcel is 2.15 acres, and the applicant's requesting to rezone 1.58 acres, so a portion of that, to allow the development of one detached dwelling. The property contains an existing historic house. The Hearst House, which was built around 1930, is located at the front of the property adjacent to Good Hope Church Road. The Hearst House, however, is not associated with this rezoning because the applicants are proposing to rezone the rear portion of the parcel to residential 40 conditional use, again to allow for the development of one detached dwelling. The current zoning is office research and development. Properties to the west and to the south are also zoned for office research and development, and they've been zoned as such for at least 25 years, prior to the adoption even of the town's 1996 land use plan and any special area plans for the historic Carpenter area. And the applicants are requesting to rezone the northern portion of this parcel to R40 conditional use. The applicants have indicated they intend to leave the front portion of the lot as ORD to preserve the historic Hearst House in its current location and upfit it for the use as a professional office. There are no conditions regarding the preservation of the house, however, because, again, it's not part of this rezoning. Staff has evaluated the rezoning using the Imagine Cary Community Plan. We note that the site's within the historic Carpenter Special Planning Area, and that the rezoning will help to preserve the Hearst House by keeping it in its immediate historic context. In looking at the future growth framework map, the development category is mixed neighborhood, which describes neighborhoods in the northwestern part of Cary. The site is also within the historic Carpenter Special Planning Area, which is one of 5 special planning areas in Cary. Guidance from the special planning area for this particular section, which is designated as this brown area with the number 5 located on this map. It indicates that new residential development should support the character of the historic area and should be low density. And staff finds that the rezoning of R40 conditional use will further bring the site into compliance with the plan. When we look at the town's GIS maps, there may be a stream buffer to the north of the site. And looking at the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Facilities Master Plan, there are no existing or proposed greenway corridors next to the site. The proposed Old Carpenter Greenway corridor is shown south of the subject property, and there are existing and proposed parks about 1 mile to the east and to the west. Good Hope Church Road is a local road, and it will remain a local road according to the transportation plan. The Carpenter Fire Station Road Realignment and Railroad Grade Separation Project is to the south of the property, and upon completion of that project, the bridge, which is over CSX Railroad, will be closed to vehicular traffic. However, the bridge is being currently evaluated by the town and NCDOT to assess feasibility for bike and pedestrian use. For both the public hearing for the town council as well as the neighborhood meeting, properties within 800 feet of the site were notified. And at the public hearing on October 25th, there were no citizens who spoke. In general, council had positive feedback for the request. Staff finds rezoning to be consistent with the Imagine Cary community plan. Staff finds that the proposal supports policies from the historic Carpenter Special Planning Area, and the proposed zoning will serve as an appropriate transition between the Hearst House and surrounding properties. The applicant is here to share comments. Following that, staff's available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. We are Michelle Humphreys and Chris Humphreys. We don't have anything technical to add. Katie has been doing a fantastic job throughout this process, but we're just here to let you know how excited we are to be this far along in the process. When they first told us how long it took, we were like, oh my goodness. So we're really excited to be here, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you. You can hang out right there if you like. Does anyone have any questions for the staff or for the applicant? We'll start on this side again.
None.
None? There, Joe?
No?
Moving right along?
Are they just wanting to build a house?
Pretty much.
Yes.
Okay,
Just wanting to build a house.
that's what I thought I'm hearing here. Good for you.
That's yeah, that's it.
I don't have any questions.
I'm good.
Well, if there's no questions, how about a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I would assume so.
I'm trying to figure out what what one are we on? REZ what?
21.
Is it 18 REZ?
18 REZ 21.
REZ 21.
All right. I move that the board find case number 18 REZ 21 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and that all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Do we have an equally enthusiastic second?
I'll second.
We'll second it together.
We'll second the second.
Considering the motion, 2 seconds together would probably be equal. Any further discussion on that?
Hey, I get how hard it is to get through this process because I did it about 15 years ago. And I love this area of Cary and the Morrisville Carpenter area. And I think that it would be a wonderful thing for somebody to build a house there.
Yeah.
So good luck to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I second that. I also just, not even knowing who was there, just the idea, the buffer, that it actually increases the buffer from the existing R40 to the, what's already zoned there. So it just continues very, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like the idea of it anyway because it preserves that historical area. But then to hear that part of the reasoning behind it was to doubly preserve the house sitting in front, even though it'll eventually be used for a commercial purpose, still intact. I think it's a win-win.
And for those of you keeping score at home, I heard Mary Jo seconded first, so. Just so we don't have to change the minutes at the next meeting. Any other discussion on that?
No, sir.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Another unanimous approval. That ends 18 REZ 21. We have no other new or old business unless anyone has anything to bring up. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
Motion we adjourn.
Any second? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion is another unanimous motion. We are adjourned. Wish everyone a great holiday. We will be back in 2019.
That's right. Awesome.
Hey.
Years flew
Thank
by.
you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.